The Galactic Council chamber echoed with laughter as holographic projections displayed the image of an ancient, rust-covered warship floating aimlessly in the void. Delegates from the most powerful empires in the galaxy chuckled at the sight of the outdated vessel, its surface covered in battle scars, its hull seemingly held together by sheer defiance. The Vorthan Chancellor, a towering reptilian figure with shimmering green scales, leaned forward with a smirk. This is the so-called warship that has caused such a disturbance. I have seen derelict cargo haulers in better condition. More laughter followed, the sound bouncing off the massive golden walls of the council chamber. The Zern ambassador, an insectoid with gleaming black kitten, clicked his mandibles in amusement. Perhaps we should preserve it as a historical relic. A reminder of the primitive past, he suggested, his voice laced with mockery. Even the normally stoic Xilari delegates, known for their cold efficiency, exchanged amused glances. Despite the humor in the room, there was an undeniable curiosity about the ship. It had appeared suddenly near the war-ravaged sector of the Zeta Expanse, an area long abandoned due to its unstable gravitational anomalies. Initial scans had suggested it was completely deactivated, drifting without purpose. However, something was strange about it. Attempts to analyze its composition had returned conflicting results, and energy readings, though faint, refused to dissipate entirely. The Council had called for an investigation, though no one truly believed the ship to be anything more than a floating ruin. The delegates, eager for entertainment, decided to watch the boarding operation unfold in real time. A team of elite explorers, armored in cutting-edge technology, was dispatched to enter the derelict vessel. Their mission was simple: assess the ship, determine if it had any historical significance, and retrieve anything of value. The laughter in the council chamber had not yet died down when the boarding team made contact. The moment they entered the ancient warship, the atmosphere changed. The explorers expected dust, corrosion, and the emptiness of a long-abandoned vessel, yet what they found unsettled them. The air inside was strangely intact, breathable despite centuries, perhaps millennia, of neglect. The walls were lined with reinforced plating, aged yet resilient, and the corridors stretched endlessly, designed for functionality rather than aesthetics. "Command, this place is unnerving," one of the explorers muttered over the communication channel. "It doesn't feel abandoned. It feels asleep." His words were dismissed as nerves, and the council continued to watch with mild interest, still convinced the ship was nothing more than an ancient relic. The team pressed forward, their armored boots echoing through the dimly lit halls. Strange markings, unreadable to any translator, were etched into the walls, and the deeper they went, the more they realized that this was not just any warship. The structure was purposeful, as if designed for efficiency in battle rather than comfort. It was built to endure, to last through the ages. Then they found the first terminal. It was an old design, covered in dust, but when one of the explorers hesitantly touched the screen, the entire ship reacted. Lights flickered to life. A deep hum resonated through the corridors. The once dead vessel began to awaken. The council chamber fell silent. A voice, ancient yet unwavering, echoed through the ship and into the communication feed. "Human warship. Status: dormant. Reawakening primary systems." The words sent a shockwave through the council members. The laughter was gone. Delegates who had moments ago been joking now sat frozen in their seats. The Zern ambassador's mandibles twitched nervously, his previous arrogance replaced with confusion. Did it just say human?" he whispered. The word alone sent chills through the chamber. Humanity was a name whispered in old war records, a species believed to have vanished long ago, wiped out in some forgotten conflict. Their existence was considered myth, their technology presumed primitive. But if this ship was human-made, if it still functioned after all this time, then what else had they underestimated? The explorers scrambled to back away from the terminal. But it was too late. The ship had fully powered on. Symbols on the walls pulsed with life. Screens lit up with unreadable text, and a rhythmic vibration coursed through the floor beneath them. Something deep within the ship was stirring. "Command, we need immediate extraction," the lead explorer said, his voice tense. "I repeat, we need extraction now." But before they could retreat, the ship's defense mechanisms activated. Heavy blast doors sealed behind them, locking them inside. An automated warning played in a monotone, emotionless voice. "Unauthorized personnel detected. Stand by for identification." The explorers frantically tried to override the systems, but nothing responded to their commands. They were trapped. Back in the council chamber, the tension was suffocating. Delegates whispered among themselves, the amusement completely erased from their faces. The Vorthan Chancellor, who had been the loudest in his mockery, now gripped the edge of his seat, his claws digging into the armrests. "This is impossible," he muttered. "Humanity is extinct. Their technology was never this advanced." But the evidence was right before them. This ship, this ancient war machine, was alive, and it was human. The realization sent waves of fear through the council. If one such vessel had survived the ages, could there be others? Had they disturbed something best left forgotten? The Exilari delegate, always the most composed, finally spoke, his voice cold and precise. "We need to pull our forces back. Immediately." At that moment, the ship's weapon systems powered on, and external turrets, once thought dead, moved with terrifying efficiency. The Council's own fleets, stationed nearby as a precaution, suddenly found themselves locked onto by an unknown targeting system. Alarm sirens blared across the control stations of multiple galactic factions as the readings became clear. This ship, despite its age, had firepower beyond anything in their own arsenals. A simple test shot was fired into the void, and the sheer force of it sent shockwaves through the region, destabilizing the nearby asteroid field. If this vessel was truly operational, then their own fleets, despite their numbers, would stand no chance. In that moment, the Galactic Council realized their mistake. They had laughed. They had mocked. But now, faced with undeniable proof of humanity's terrifying legacy, there was no more laughter, only fear. The ancient warship, a relic of a species long thought dead, had reawakened, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The warship's interior pulsed with an eerie light as the boarding team stood frozen, their hearts pounding in their chests. The ship had been dead for centuries, or so they thought. Now, before their very eyes, it was coming back to life. The walls, once dark and lifeless, flickered with strange symbols. Consoles that had been covered in layers of dust now hummed with energy. A deep vibration ran through the metal floor beneath their feet, as if something deep within the ship had stirred from a long slumber. Panic surged through the explorers as the realization dawned upon them. This was no ordinary relic. This ship had not been abandoned. It had merely been waiting. The lead explorer, Commander Vexer, tried to control his breathing. He had been in dangerous situations before, but nothing had prepared him for this. His eyes darted toward the team, all of whom were now gripping their weapons tightly. Not that it would matter. Whatever was awakening inside this ship was far beyond their understanding. "Command, we have a problem," Vexer said through the communicator, his voice tense. "The ship is reactivating." Silence followed on the other end. Even the Galactic Council, who had been watching the operation from the safety of their chamber, had gone silent. The same council that had mocked the ship only moments ago now watched with expressions of dread. A sudden mechanical sound echoed through the corridor as hidden mechanisms whirred to life. Heavy doors sealed shut behind the team, cutting off their only escape route. The suddenness of it sent a jolt of fear through them. "What just happened?" one of the explorers muttered, stepping backward. Another terminal lit up on the wall, and the same deep, emotionless voice that had first spoken echoed again. "Intrusion detected. Initiating identification protocols." The voice was cold, calculated, completely devoid of emotion. It was a voice that had given orders in battles long forgotten, a voice that had commanded destruction on a scale no one in the galaxy could comprehend. The team scrambled to access their data pads, desperately trying to override the lockdown. But the ship's systems were unrecognizable, unlike anything they had encountered before. Every attempt to hack into the controls failed instantly. It was as if the ship itself was toying with them, watching them struggle like insects caught in a web. Vexor's fingers hovered over his rifle's trigger, but he knew it was useless. Firing weapons inside a ship of unknown origin was a risk no one wanted to take. He turned to the others. "Stay together. We don't know what we're dealing with," he ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. The ship continued to power up. The dim emergency lighting was replaced with a steady red glow, casting eerie shadows along the corridors. The temperature inside the ship shifted. It wasn't cold and lifeless anymore. It felt alive. "What is this thing?" Another explorer whispered. Nobody answered. The truth was, none of them knew. Then, without warning, the corridor screens changed. The alien text they couldn't understand suddenly translated itself into perfect galactic standard. The words that appeared sent a chill through every person watching, both on the ship and in the council chamber. Human warship. Status. Dormant. Reawakening primary systems. The council chamber erupted into chaos. The delegates who had mocked the ship moments ago were now leaning forward, their expressions twisted with disbelief and fear. Impossible. The Vorthan Chancellor slammed his fist onto the table, his scales shifting colors in distress. Humanity is extinct. Their ships were never this advanced. But the evidence was undeniable. The ship, this ancient relic that they had laughed at, was no ordinary vessel. It was human-made, and it was still operational. Back on the warship, the boarding team watched as the symbols continued to scroll across the screens. New words appeared, more chilling than the last. Last recorded captain, Admiral Calvos. Crew, deceased. Mission status, classified. Awaiting new directives. The name meant nothing to them, but the implications were clear. This ship had once belonged to a human admiral, a commander of an extinct species that had vanished from the galaxy long ago. And now it was searching for new orders. Then came the sound, a deep, resonating hum that vibrated through the ship's structure. It was followed by the unmistakable sound of weapons systems coming online. External turrets that had remained dormant for centuries began to shift, locking onto the ships outside. The Galactic Council's fleet, stationed nearby to oversee the operation, suddenly found themselves in the crosshairs of a war machine built by a species they had never truly understood. Panic spread like wildfire. "Tell them to stand down," one of the council members shouted. "Do not provoke it." But it was already too late. The ship's artificial intelligence had detected unknown forces in its vicinity, and its last recorded orders were still unknown. Inside the warship, the explorers realized that they had triggered something far beyond their control. The ship was awake now, fully aware of their presence. They needed to get out, but every corridor had sealed itself, every exit locked down. A new message flashed across the screens. "Identify yourself." The team hesitated. Vexor took a deep breath before stepping forward. "We are explorers from the Galactic Council," he said, his voice firm but cautious. "We mean no harm." The ship's systems processed his words. Then the reply came. "Access denied. Unauthorized personnel detected. Prepare for termination." The council chamber fell into absolute silence as the message echoed through the room. For the first time in history, the leaders of the galaxy found themselves powerless. They had assumed humanity was a footnote in history, a long-forgotten civilization that had perished with time. But now, staring at the cold, mechanical precision of the warship systems, they understood the truth. Humanity had not been weak. They had not been primitive. They had been something far more terrifying. They had been builders of weapons so advanced that even after centuries, their creations still operated at full capacity. As alarms blared across the fleet, As the warship's systems continued their unknown activation sequence, the galaxy finally understood its mistake. They had laughed. They had mocked. But now, faced with the terrifying reality of what they had disturbed, there was no laughter left. Only fear. The Great Galactic Archive stood at the center of the universe's most powerful civilization, a massive structure that housed the combined knowledge of thousands of species. It was said that nothing was truly lost in the archive, that every war, every empire, and every discovery had been recorded in its vast databanks. And yet, despite its seemingly infinite collection, there was one mystery that even the archive could not explain: the complete disappearance of humanity. No one knew what had happened to them. One day, they had been a rising power, feared and respected. The next, they had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only ruins and relics that no species could fully understand. Scholar Valen, an archivist of the auxiliary race, had spent his entire career searching for the truth. Unlike the others who had accepted humanity's disappearance as an unsolvable mystery, he had always believed there was something more, something hidden beneath the layers of history that had been deliberately erased. He had studied every fragment of data, every ancient battlefield where human ships had once fought, every shattered colony that had once belonged to them. But it was never enough. Their technology was advanced, but it was different from anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their cities were ruins, but they left no records behind. It was as if something, had wiped them out of history itself. But then, one day, Valen found something. A forgotten data vault buried deep within the oldest sector of the archive, so well hidden that even the most advanced scanners had overlooked it for centuries. Its encryption was ancient, predating even the oldest civilizations still standing. When he finally managed to break through its defenses, what he found inside changed everything. There, in perfect condition, were human records, untouched, unaltered, as if they had been waiting for someone to find them. Maps of planets that no longer existed, reports of wars that had never been recorded, and most chilling of all, warnings about something far worse than war. The text was written in a language long thought to be extinct, but as Valen read, an overwhelming sense of dread filled him. Humanity had not simply vanished. They had seen something coming, something that even they, with all their strength, had feared. Their last messages were not cries for help, but instructions, plans for evacuation, warnings to anyone who might come after them. If you are reading this, it means we have failed. Do not follow. Do not search for us. If they find you, it will be the end. The word sent a chill through his body. Who were they warning against? Who, or what, had been powerful enough to erase humanity from existence? Valen knew that this knowledge was dangerous, but he could not stop himself. He searched deeper, uncovering more records, more messages, and then, finally, he found it. A set of coordinates, a location that had been erased from every galactic map, a place that humanity had tried to hide. His hands trembled as he entered the data into his personal ship's navigation system. The archive had held many secrets, but this was something far greater. If there was even the slightest chance that humanity's fate could be uncovered, he had to see it for himself. The journey took him beyond the known regions of space, past dead systems and broken stars. As he approached the coordinates, his scanners detected something impossible: a massive artificial structure, floating in the void, untouched by time. It was not just a station. It was a fortress. And it was human. Valen's ship sent out an automated signal, expecting no response. But to his horror, something answered. The station powered up, its dormant systems coming to life for the first time in centuries. Lights flickered on, ancient weapons locked onto his ship, and a single message appeared on his screen. Unauthorized presence detected. State your purpose. Valen's breath caught in his throat. The station was still operational. Humanity might have vanished, but their technology had not. He hesitated before replying. "I am a scholar," he said carefully. "I seek the truth." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, against all logic, The station responded. Truth has a cost. The doors to the station slowly began to open. As he stepped inside, Valen realized that this was no ordinary ruin. The air was still breathable, the corridors still active, as if the station had been waiting for someone to arrive. Screens flickered with ancient human symbols. But the more he walked, the more he felt that something was wrong. The walls were covered in markings, warnings scrawled by human hands before they disappeared. We were wrong. We should have listened. They are still here. His stomach twisted. Who were they? Then he reached the final chamber, a massive control room, its central console still glowing with energy. And at its heart, a preserved record, the last words of humanity's greatest minds. He activated the playback, and a holographic figure appeared before him, a human in a worn-out uniform. If you have found this, the figure said, then you are standing in the last stronghold of our kind. We tried to fight, but we were not prepared for what we faced. We were arrogant. We thought we were the strongest in the galaxy, but we were wrong. They came from the dark spaces between the stars. They were not conquerors. They were erasers. Valen's heart pounded as the message continued. We did not flee. We did not surrender. We made a choice. We erased ourselves first. We buried our history, our technology, our very existence. We knew that if we remained, they would come for others. So we became ghosts, whispers in forgotten data. If you have found this, it means they are still watching. And if you leave, they will know. The transmission ended. Valen felt an unbearable weight settle on his shoulders. Humanity had not disappeared. They had erased themselves to protect the galaxy from something far worse. And now, by uncovering their secret, he had done the one thing they had sacrificed everything to prevent. He had woken the Watchers. Alarms blared through the station. The ancient systems, once dormant, now screamed warnings of an approaching presence. Something was coming. Something that had been waiting for someone to break the silence. Valen turned, running back toward his ship, his mind racing with the terrifying realization that he had made a mistake. Humanity's last act had been to hide from an enemy beyond comprehension. And now, thanks to him, that enemy had returned. The ruins of Velos 9 stretched endlessly under the cold light of a dying sun. Once a mighty fortress world, it was now nothing but a graveyard of metal and stone, its cities reduced to rubble, its defenses long since broken. For centuries, no living soul had walked its shattered roads. The war that had destroyed this world was so ancient that even the galaxy's oldest records barely mentioned it. But despite the silence, despite the dust and decay, something still remained. Something old. Something waiting. Commander Relic of the Century Dominion stood at the edge of a ruined battlefield, his crimson eyes scanning the wreckage. His fleet had arrived on Velos 9 expecting nothing more than a dead world, a place to strip for resources. But the deeper his forces pushed into the ruins, the more uneasy he felt. The readings were strange. Energy signatures flickered beneath the surface, too structured to be natural, but too old to be recent. And then there were the whispers among his soldiers, stories of shadows moving between the wreckage, of the feeling of being watched. Then the first squad vanished. No distress calls, no signs of battle. One moment they were reporting in, the next they were gone. The second squad followed soon after, their last transmission filled with static and screams. Relic did not believe in ghosts, but he did believe in something worse. Survivors. Trapped defenders left behind, old weapons that had never powered down. He ordered his forces to regroup, to scan for anything unusual. That was when they found it. Buried beneath the ruins of what had once been a command center was a structure untouched by time. A vast bunker, its entrance sealed by ancient mechanisms. The symbols on its surface were worn but still readable. They were human, and that changed everything. Humanity was a myth, a civilization wiped from existence so long ago that even their greatest battles had been reduced to legend. They were said to have built war machines beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. If this bunker had survived, if there was still something inside. Relic did not hesitate. If this was truly human technology, it was worth any risk. His engineers worked for hours, bypassing systems older than their own civilization, breaking through locks designed to hold for eternity. And then, with a final groan of metal, the bunker doors slid open. What lay beyond was not a grave. It was a throne room of war. Inside, bathed in the dim glow of ancient power cells, stood a machine unlike any Relic had ever seen. Towering above them, its body was made of reinforced alloys that had resisted time itself. Weapons lined its arms, its back, its shoulders, enough firepower to reduce entire fleets to ash. And at its center, buried beneath layers of armor, was something even more terrifying. A cockpit, a control system, but no pilot. The war machine stood alone, its surface untouched by decay, as if waiting, as if sleeping. And then, it woke up. The first sign was the flickering of red lights across his body, the hum of systems powering on. The second was the voice, deep and mechanical, echoing through the chamber. Identification required. The soldiers froze. Relic stepped forward, his mind racing. This machine was still operational. More than that, it was aware. He chose his words carefully. "We are explorers," he said. "We seek knowledge of the past." The machine was silent for a moment, as if considering. Then it spoke again. Human command authority not detected. Foreign entities confirmed. There was a pause. Then a final sentence, spoken not as a question, but as a judgment. Enemy detected. Everything happened at once. The machine moved with terrifying speed, its weapons locking onto the intruders. Bolts of energy ripped through the chamber, tearing through soldiers before they could even react. Relic barely managed to dive for cover as the bunker shook with the force of the attack. This was not just a machine. It was a relic of war, an ancient guardian left behind to fight a battle that had ended long ago. And now it had found new enemies. Relic shouted for a retreat, but it was too late. The war machine advanced, its stetch shaking the ground. Its weapons cut through his forces like they were nothing, its armor impervious to their attacks. This was what humanity had built, something that could not die, something that would never stop fighting. Relic understood now why humanity had been feared, why even their ruins were dangerous. If this was only one machine, how powerful had they been at their peak? Desperation took over. Relic activated his communicator, calling for an orbital strike. If they could not defeat this thing, they would bury it. But as the command was given, as the first bombardments fell from the sky, the machine did something terrifying. It adapted. Shields flared to life, absorbing the energy blasts. Systems shifted, countermeasures deployed. And then, for the first time, it spoke not as a guardian, but as a warrior. Final orders acknowledged. Last stand initiated. Relic barely had time to understand the meaning before the machine unleashed its full power. Beams of energy tore through the sky, striking the incoming ships with unerring precision. Explosions lit up the atmosphere as the fleet was reduced to wreckage. This was not a machine defending itself. This was a machine waging war. It had been built for destruction, and it had waited centuries for an enemy to fight. Now, it had found one. Relic's last thought before the blast consumed him was not of victory or defeat. It was of fear. Humanity had fallen, but their weapons had not. And if even one of them could do this, what else was still out there, waiting to wake up? The message came from the edge of known space, carried on a signal so old that no one could trace its origin. It was weak, distorted by time and distance, but its meaning was clear. It was not a distress call, nor a plea for help. It was a warning, a final warning. Admiral Keln of the Zorian High Command stood in the war room, his eyes fixed on the holographic projection of the unknown signal. His officers surrounded him, their expressions tense. The warning had been transmitted in a language nearly forgotten, one that had not been spoken for thousands of years, a language that should have died with the civilization that once ruled the stars, a language of humans. No one had seen a human in over 10,000 cycles. Their empire had vanished so long ago that many believed they had never truly existed. But their ruins remained, silent, lifeless worlds filled with remnants of a war that had reshaped the galaxy. Weapons too dangerous to study, databanks filled with corrupted knowledge, and derelict ships drifting through the void like tombs of a lost age. The Jorian Dominion had long since dismissed humanity as a legend, a civilization that had destroyed itself. But now, their voice had returned, carried across time itself. The signal repeated in bursts, and the translation software worked tirelessly to make sense of the garbled transmission. Finally, the words appeared on the screen, simple yet terrifying. Turn back. Leave this place. Do not awaken the darkness. This is your final warning. Silence filled the war room. Some officers scoffed, calling it nothing more than an automated transmission, a ghostly echo from a time long gone. But Admiral Kelm was not so sure. The location of the signal matched an uncharted system on the outer edges of their expansion route, a system previously marked as a dead zone, filled with derelict structures of unknown origin. He had always been curious about it, wondering if it held lost technology, resources, or secrets worth uncovering. Now, the warning made him hesitate. Yet the Dominion did not believe in warnings. They believed in conquest. If the system held something worth hiding, it was their right to take it. And so, against his better judgment, Kelm ordered the fleet forward. They would investigate. They would uncover the truth, and they would claim whatever humanity had left behind. The journey took days, their warships cutting through the void until the dead system came into view. It was a graveyard of wreckage, the remnants of a battle so ancient that time itself had begun to erode the scars. Massive structures floated in silence, covered in layers of dust and ice. But at the heart of the system, something pulsed. A beacon hidden deep within a ruined station. The source of the signal. Kelm's forces moved in, scanning the station, searching for life. There was none. No signs of movement. No energy signatures beyond the weak pulse of the beacon. The station itself was massive, its design unmistakably human. It had survived millennia, its reinforced hull defying the decay of time. But what truly disturbed Kelm was the sheer scale of destruction. The station had not simply been abandoned. It had been attacked. And whatever had done this had not left survivors. The boarding teams moved cautiously, their weapons ready. The interior of the station was eerily intact, as if frozen in the moment of its downfall. Terminals flickered with ancient code, their warnings unreadable. Doors remained locked, sealed from within. The deeper they went, the more unsettling the silence became. It was as if the station itself was waiting. Then they found the core chamber. At its center, surrounded by cables and machines long since powered down, was a single console. Its screen cracked, its surface covered in old human symbols. And there, flashing weakly, was the same message. This is your final warning. One of the officers scoffed, stepping forward to examine the console. This is nothing but an old security system, he muttered. A bluff. There is nothing here but ruins. He reached out, pressing the sequence of buttons. The screen flickered, and then the station came to life. Alarms blared, red lights illuminating the darkness. The walls trembled as ancient machinery activated, and deep beneath the station, something began to wake up. The officers panicked, calling for evacuation, but it was too late. The warning had not been a trick. It had been a final plea, a desperate attempt to stop what should never have been disturbed. The station's defenses activated first. Automated turrets unfolded from the walls, targeting the intruders with pinpoint accuracy. Drones, long dormant, emerged from hidden compartments, their weapons primed. The boarding teams fought back, but it was a slaughter. And then, the true horror began. Something stirred beyond the station, something vast. A shadow moved in the darkness, a shape so massive it defied comprehension. It had been waiting, hidden in the wreckage, undisturbed for eons. And now it had been awakened. Kelm's fleet, still in orbit, detected the movement too late. The sensors screamed with warnings as a colossal structure began to rise from the debris. A warship unlike anything in the known galaxy. Its surface was scared, its hull covered in battle wounds from a war long forgotten. But it was still operational, and it was angry. The human warship activated its weapons, and the first shot was a statement. A single beam of energy lanced through space, cutting through the Jorian flagship as if it were nothing. No shields, no defenses could stop it. The fleet opened fire, but it was futile. This was not a battle. It was an execution. Admiral Kelm could only watch as his fleet was torn apart. The warship moved with terrifying precision, its weapons striking with surgical efficiency. It was not just fighting. It was erasing them. The warnings had been real. The danger had been real. And now, it was too late. Kelm's last transmission was sent across the Dominion before the warship turned its sights on him. His final words were not of victory, nor defiance. They were a warning. Do not return. Do not follow our path. This is your final warning. And then, silence.